Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan anime review. This one's going to be for Season 4, Part 2, Episode 9. And yeah, we got a mostly dialogue episode, not a lot of notable animation in this one. But it definitely was an episode that I suppose was needed, because what we're doing here is we are setting up effectively why these two sides, who absolutely hate each other, can work together to take down Eren. You had to do that because the stakes and the conflict between like Marley effectively here and Party is so huge that you have to go into that, because this is a blood feud and it's directly addressed in a lot of the dialogue that we get in this episode, where it is literally this sort of cycle of hatred back and forth that, you know, hasn't maybe cycled as many times, but it's this thing that could steamroll on of Eldians, I suppose, effectively are kind of what started it. Marley now has control, and they are now the ones effectively performing the genocide, and now the counter to that is Eren gaining freedom for Paradis by wiping out the rest of the world. And something needs to stop this, and so they decide that, yeah, it probably is ultimately the best thing to team up here. But what's interesting about it is that it's obviously dialogue that has you as the viewer very much kind of think about, okay, who do you agree with, who do you not agree with? But they also position our sort of main cast, original main cast, I suppose, like John, Hanji and stuff like that, the characters that we've known for like most of the series, as they are the ones who reach out the hand to, they leave a position where if they chose to not work with Marley, they technically win. They get their freedom, but they're willing to sort of risk that and actually help their enemies to somehow, prevent the genocide of those people, and that's placing them in a good position. And it really highlights that Magath, when he has the argument with John, is still again events that to him he didn't actually like experience. It's obviously a major part of history, because they don't just say it was something that happened 2,000 years ago. It's like the majority of those 2,000 years were Eldia in control, and it's actually only relatively recent history that things have switched. But still, they bring up the idea of the sequence of events that happened right now are directly caused by Marley. That, like, it's pointed out that, like, if Eren didn't have to witness his mother dying, like, yeah, this wouldn't have happened. If the walls weren't broken down, so many things wouldn't actually have happened, and that that's the fault of all of this. So I like the episode from that perspective, and that it got you thinking. But I will say is just that if you've been paying attention throughout Part 1 and Part 2, you've probably already been thinking about this like the whole time through. And while it's good to have the characters just directly sort of have the discussion effectively that everyone's been thinking about, it doesn't add like too much more on top of it, other than to, I think, get across that, our main characters, we respect them for being the ones to, basically be willing to sacrifice the winning position effectively to help their enemies, even though they basically know that it probably won't lead to peace with the rest of the world, Marley, and that more than likely they probably have to accept that they would be attacked after the threat of Eren is dealt with, and the genocide of Eldia probably does happen. So that is an interesting thing, in that, like, there's immediately that sense of, okay, Hanji especially wants to be someone who ends this cycle of like mass killing. So that was definitely good. But I liked Jean kind of being the one to sort of be that sort of, not opposing Hanji, but sort of questioning the, I suppose, idealism in a way of her taking that position, by pointing out that, like, what Eren's doing, like, for us, makes sense to a point, because of what happened, and then he's the one to argue very heavily with Magath. And it's pretty telling that like Magath is the one in the discussion to resort straight to the, like, it's like arguing with a child. And then Hanji has to sort of step and be like, whoa, none of us were around back then, like there's no need to bring that up. So it's interesting to see how this happens, because it suggests that, like, okay, the ultimate like takeaway from this episode is that, oh, like we can all sit around and have a discussion, even though, you know, technically we've all killed a lot of people on each other's sides, but we can actually talk with each other here. And if this is possible, then like peace is possible. Which again is cool, optimistic, idealistic, but the question is, that's good, and it's a good example between certain individuals, but this only works as like a pathway to peace if this is like the situation with a large amount of the population on both sides, which doesn't appear to be the case. That it is more or less the situation where most of the rest of the world hates Eldia, which is why Eren is doing what he's doing. Is that because he doesn't believe that no matter what Eldia Party does, they will ever be able to convince the rest of the world that they're not demons who need to be taken out. That they'll always be hated for, you know, what happened all those years ago. Which, now that we have that full backstory from that episode earlier in the season, it's interesting to highlight that it's not really the full Eldian people who are responsible for this at all. It's just King Fritz, basically, who, you know, manipulated Ymir, like, is probably the overall villain of the piece, but he's just, like, basically in that backstory randomly killed, and, you know, things just happen like that from then on. He just sets into motion this kind of series of events that, you know, gets way out of control, without even, like, almost like meaning to, in a way. So it's just that, like, again, it kind of highlights that, like, wow, like, that's how we get to the present day crazy series of events is all because of that kind of incident from the past. What else do we get here? Like, again, it's a lot of dialogue in this episode, and it is, for the most part, I think, good. You know, you have the Yelena effectively pointing out the terrible things that everyone around has done. You have, you know, again, just the fact that they are just having the kind of meal together. The big thing that I suppose gets brought up here is the story, like, with Marco. What exactly happened to Marco comes out in the open. John hears about it for the first time and, like, punches Reiner. Bit of a weird moment where, like, that line at the end, from towards the end, that, like, Annie says, and she's just like, "and me." I think I get what they were going for, but it felt like there was a line of dialogue missing, because John just says, like, I won't, like, forgive you. What is it that he says? He says something like, oh yeah, I won't be apologizing to you, Reiner. And then Annie's like, "and me?" And it's like, wait, Annie, like, why would you be deserving of an apology? He didn't, like, hit her. So what was that about? That felt like something was missing there. But yeah, like, again, I guess it's going to be a relatively short review, but I just feel like the dynamic, I suppose, between, like, Marley and Party, I have sort of discussed on and off throughout the reviews, and so this episode just sort of bring it to the forefront. I don't overly feel the need to go into. Annie confronted most of the main cast about, like, can you actually fight Eren? I sort of know that if you do decide now, you will. When it comes down to it, you'll probably fight us to, like, defend him in some way, so you guys need to think about that. I liked the kind of shot at the beginning to get across Hanji's point of having, like, all the lost, you know, scouts and stuff like that in the background, and highlighting that even though most of the scouts died without ever knowing or understanding that there were other people outside the walls, on a different anywhere outside the island, even knowing that what they lived on was an island, all of them wouldn't agree with the idea that the island in the grand scheme of in the world should be the thing that is like above all else, and that's like her core point. But again, I think a lot of this just feels kind of like, okay, this is great that all these characters are figuring this out, but Eren is the one who has ultimately implemented this, and the fact that they're kind of hiding or very much holding back on telling us Eren's potentially true feelings on all of this feels kind of weird. In that it feels like, am I wrong for kind of feeling like I should be holding out hope that Eren has something else in plan and that there'll be a bit of a switch up or what? That's one of the things that is still going through my head. Otherwise, as we're getting towards the end of the season, there's only a few episodes left, and I don't think we're resolving the entire plot in 3 episodes. So whatever way they decide to do the last section of the story, I'm kind of just worried going into that, just on the basis of you're going to have a lot of character stuff with Eren to do very, very quickly, and I'm not sure how well that's going to work. Again, the history with this show is that it has typically delivered on longer term plots like that, but this one where you really hide the character's motivations by just not featuring the character all that much, I find never tends to work massively well. So we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, the setup going forward is, again, they mentioned the idea that they're going to need airships, they're going to need to go to the port, and we end with the idea that the Jaegers have taken over the port, and that's the next episode. They're going to have to fight, basically party versus party, to, further highlight what was discussed in this episode, that our main cast is effectively giving up the victory position, and to do that they'll have to fight people who agree with what Eren is doing, and are they going to be okay with doing that? So that's going to be kind of an emotional thing, I suppose, to see how much, I suppose, killing is done. Is this going to be the resolution with Floch in the next episode? Might we see him get taken out here? Because again, I'd be shocked if they managed to convince him and talk him down and make him join their side. But they might be able to convince a lot of the people below Floch maybe to join them, because they need as many people as they can get for the final fight. So, interesting enough episode. Didn't blow me away, but I appreciated them just in a very clear-cut way having the discussions that you as a viewer is kind of going through in your mind about which side is in the right, which is the correct path, and so on. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. But other than that, that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.